Good morning once again, and thanks for staying with us here on the Market Day Report. I'm Janet Atkison. Well, throughout June, we've been highlighting dairy producers across the country as we celebrate National Dairy Month. Well, now we want to take a deeper dive into some of the main priorities for the industry. That's with the help of some firsthand perspective. Joining us now is Jessica Learman. She's with the Dairy Management Inc. Galen Smith, he's the owner of Coldspring Farms, and our friend Bjerga with the National Milk Producers Council. And of course, our Milk Producers Federation, that is, Alan. Well, thank you all for taking the time to join us. We certainly appreciate it this morning. Now, Jessica, let's start with you first. Can you give us a bit of an update on how dairy has been promoted throughout this National Dairy Month?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. June is always such an amazing moment to celebrate, all things dairy and dairy farmers and the wonderful story we have to tell as an industry and as a community. People want to know where their food comes from, and they're further removed than ever before from the farming community. And so that's why we at Checkoff and across the industry really want to take this moment to share everything we can about dairy, starting with the unexpected voices of, the next generation of dairy. Some of the folks like Galen and others, farmers like him who are out there authentically, they're our strongest voices and advocates. So we do everything we can to highlight everything that they're doing on their farms, highlighting the next generation farmers, introducing them to the next generation of consumers. And then, we're promoting creative recipes online. We're working with influencers to provide kind of inspiration and excitement around dairy and what it can bring to a meal. We know locally folks are holding farm open houses and tours and retail promotions and events. And this month, in fact, we've actually launched some new videos as well that we're targeting specifically to Gen Z to bring dairy's benefits to this new generation. But always, farmers are our strongest voices and advocates, and so they play a central role in everything that we do to promote dairy this month and beyond.
Now, Galen, as we mentioned, you're the owner of Coldspring Farms. Give us an overview, if you would, of your operation and how you're celebrating the month.
Yes. Good morning, Jeanette. And as Jessica said, thanks for the opportunity for, your audience. And Coldspring Farms, we're in the northwest corner of Washington State, right up next to the Canadian border. My wife and I, Laura, share in a dairy business with my father-in-law and a couple other family members. We milk approximately 1,700 cows, and we farm 1,500 acres of grass and corn silages. And we celebrate Dairy Month every month, every day here on the dairy. To be honest, I think one of the things I like to say is we were green before green was cool. But we do that by locally engaging in our community, sponsoring events here on our farm, sponsoring youth athletics, sponsoring FFA projects, and also just trying to be the best daily example that we can of sustainable, renewable dairy farming here on our farm.
Now, Alan, you serve as a voice for the dairy farmers, the National Milk Producers Federation. What have been some of the biggest issues that you guys have been advocating for on behalf of producers?
Well, I want to pick up on something that Galen said about being green before green was cool. The whole dairy sector was really like that. And when you look at things like the upcoming Farm Bill and you see some of the initiatives we've seen in terms of climate smart agriculture, you see dairy having a really great story to tell as a sustainable, nutritious product that is ever growing in domestic consumption in the U.S. and growing in exports worldwide. Dairy has a lot to talk about that's very positive. You look at Jessica and some of the discussions about what Dairy Management Inc. is doing with Generation Z and really getting that next generation of milk drinkers, of dairy consumers on board. It all ties together in policy discussions as well, making sure that there is labeling transparency and integrity in even what a label is versus, dairy versus a plant-based beverage. You look at the upcoming Farm Bill, you look at some of the wins that we've had on exports recently with the Ocean Shipping Reform Act recently passing Congress and being signed into law. It's been a very exciting month for dairy, but also what Galen was saying, every month is an exciting month for dairy. It's not just about National Dairy Month. Great chance to be highlighted on programs like yours, but we're working on it every day.
Now, Jessica, we talked about you guys reaching out and reaching consumers, but how is the industry working to specifically reach Gen Z?
Absolutely. And as Alan said, they're the next generation of our consumers, and they're coming up now. They've got spending power of over $100 billion. That's not counting the influence they have on their parents and their families. So they're not a small target. And so we really did the work to figure out what makes this generation unique and how we can uniquely connect with them with dairy's benefits that matter. They're a stressed out generation. They've been raised on social media and on devices their entire lives. And notwithstanding the pandemic, they're looking for things like immunity and sustained energy and calm and some of these benefits that dairy can uniquely bring to them, and of course sustainability. So it's really about understanding what matters to them and talking to them in a way or tone that resonates. So we've got some new videos coming out this month, in fact, that really lean into that idea of dairy being kind of your moment of calm, your moment of reset, if you will. When life's everyday stressors happen, dairy can help you kind of reset yourself and move forward. But we also can't talk about reaching Gen Z without talking about channels. These kids are not watching the 6 o'clock news. They're not buying magazines at the store. They're listening to influencers. They're gaming. 90% of Gen Z plays video games, which is something that I doubt most of us on this panel do. But they do, and they listen to what gamers say. And so we work with influential gamers. And we also put our videos on things like Twitch, which is an online gaming platform, and other channels that many of us on this platform or on this interview are probably not familiar with, like TikTok and Vivo. But they resonate with Gen Z, and that's what matters. We need to bring dairy's relevance to them. We're also looking at college campuses and places that we can reach them in person, and online retail. These kids do everything from their phones, and that includes grocery shopping. So how can we bring dairy's benefits to them right at that moment of purchase? So we're working hard across channels to be relevant to this new generation and to bring them dairy's good story.
Now, speaking of consumers, a big issue for the industry has been dairy labeling. Alan, where do we currently stand there?
Well, with labeling, the Food and Drug Administration is supposedly giving guidance this summer as to the use of these terms that's proper. We, of course, hope that they follow some of the suggestions that we've been making in terms of making sure that consumers know what is a dairy product and what isn't a dairy product. One thing important that's pointed out is that plant-based beverage consumption is actually going down. I think consumers are starting to figure out some of the nutritional issues involved with this, but we also have to make sure that nutritional confusion among consumers as far as what the content is of some of these beverages, as has been acknowledged by the last 3 commissioners of FDA, is clearly reflected in labeling.
Now, before we wrap things up, guys, Galen, I want to touch back with you. You also farm 1,500 acres of grass and corn. You're in the Pacific Northwest, as you mentioned earlier. How have conditions been for you guys, not just for the crops, of course, but also for your herd?
Yeah, great question, Jeanette. Across the U.S., to be honest, we're seeing extremes everywhere. We are very wet, very cool this spring. We're probably 40 days behind schedule. Usually we like to be planted with our corn May 10th, May 15th, and we are yet to plant any corn. Cow production wise, milk production wise, it's actually been very, very favorable for the cows. So that has been a positive thing. But we are currently just finishing up today, harvesting our first cutting grass, which is about 40 to 50 days behind schedule. So it's been very challenging this spring. Every year is a little bit different puzzle, but we try to put it together. I think dairy farmers are the eternal optimist. We will still plant that seed and, with the help of God, harvest a fantastic crop this fall. So we will continue to do our best and be innovative and resourceful to try to stay sustainable and relevant in the dairy industry.
Well, Alan, do you have any final words for us as we wrap things up?
Just that National Dairy Month is something that we should be thinking about every month. And B, I know you're working hard on Gen Z there, Jessica, but I'll have you know that back in the day, I played a pretty mean game of Tetris myself.
Well, we appreciate all 3 of you taking the time to join us here this morning. Great conversation about the nation's dairy industry and the nation's dairy producers. Again, talking with Jessica Learman. She's with Dairy Management, Inc. Also, Galen Smith, owner of Coldspring Farms, and Alan Bjerga. He's with the National Milk Producers Federation. Thank you all for joining us.